It was supposed to be the quietest assignment of the month. A remote checkpoint buried somewhere in the Appalachian backcountry, where the ridgelines fold into one another like waves frozen in stone. The radio called it Station E7, but to the handful of men posted there, it was just the shack. A cabin, half concrete, half timber, welded to a cliff that stared down a valley no map seemed to name. The winter of '83 had been merciless. Every night felt like the mountain wanted to swallow them whole. Snow pressed against the window frames, radios hissed with static, and the wind cut through the cables like an animal's cry. For Sergeant Reeves, the shift from midnight to 0400 was routine. Check the radar feed, log the weather, and make sure the generator didn't choke again. Nothing ever moved out there, except the cold. At 23:47, the valley was silent. At 23:48, the silence changed. A faint hum, low, metallic, almost like the sound of power lines bending under ice, slid through the floorboards. Reeves paused, hand over the mug that had kept him sane for weeks. The other two men, Corporal Davis and Private Leno, didn't notice. They were busy arguing about a card game that never seemed to end. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, and the hum stopped. "Generator again," Davis muttered, pushing away from the table. Reeves didn't answer. He was staring at the radar screen. One green dot blinked where there should have been nothing. A single return, small, erratic, too low to be an aircraft, too high to be a patrol vehicle. It hovered just outside their perimeter. Then it vanished. Reeves leaned in, tracing the echo with his finger. "You see that?" Leno rolled his chair beside him. "Probably a glitch. Weather does that sometimes." But the sergeant's jaw tightened. Weather doesn't move against the wind. He switched channels on the radio. Channel 9, the one that reached the next station down the ridge. Static. Switched again. Channel 5, command relay. Nothing. Every frequency was silent except for one. An open, unregistered channel transmitting a steady tone. 5 seconds long, 5 seconds off, repeating endlessly, like a heartbeat. The tone wasn't coming from outside. It was broadcasting from below them. Davis laughed nervously. "That can't be right. We're the only post for 40 miles. Reeves picked up the field receiver. "Command, this is Echo 7. Do you copy?" No response. Only the tone. The clock ticked to midnight. The shift officially began. Outside, the snow had stopped. The moon crawled out from behind the ridge, silvering the landscape. The forest, usually a tangle of black, looked glassy, frozen veins glimmering in the light. Leno opened the window to listen. No wind, no owls, nothing. The silence pressed like a weight. Then something shifted down the slope. Not an avalanche, not an animal either. A sound that came in short bursts. Metal and stone, deliberate, rhythmic. Reeves loaded his flashlight, slung the rifle across his chest. "I'll check the generator. You two stay on comms." Davis frowned. "Sarge, the generator's up the trail, not down there." "I know," Reeves said quietly. "Just keep the door locked." The door groaned as it opened, spilling a stripe of yellow light into the snow. Reeves stepped into the cold, the beam of his flashlight slicing through the mist. His breath clouded in front of him. Every crunch of his boots echoed up the cliffside. Halfway down the slope, the hum returned. Stronger now, pulsing from under the ground. Reeves knelt, brushed away a layer of snow. Beneath it, the tip of an antenna glinted in the moonlight, one that wasn't part of their installation. Someone had buried a transmitter right under station E7. He whispered into his mic, "Davis, Leno, you copy?" Only the tone answered back. 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off. Inside the shack, Davis slammed the radio panel in frustration. He's not getting through. Leno's eyes darted to the window. Sarge told us to stay put. But curiosity gnawed at him. He leaned closer to the glass. That's when he saw it, just beyond the floodlight's reach. A second floodlight blinking back. Then another, and another. 3 flashes, spaced perfectly apart, forming a straight line along the ridge. "Who else is out here?" Leno whispered. Davis froze. "There's no other outpost between us and base." Reeves's voice suddenly cracked through the radio, distorted, urgent. "Kill the lights, now." Davis didn't think. He hit the main switch. The entire shack plunged into darkness. Outside, the mountainside erupted in ghostly silence. For several seconds, nothing. Then a flicker, like lightning but silent, rolled across the valley, illuminating the peaks in white. In that flash, they saw movement. Shadows shifting in formation, hundreds of meters away, marching without sound, without light. The flash faded, and darkness swallowed them again. Davis whispered, "What did you see?" Reeves's reply came broken by static. "Not sure, but they weren't ours." And somewhere far below, buried under a mile of stone and ice, the hidden transmitter continued its mechanical heartbeat. 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off. That night, the war they never spoke of began. The storm returned before dawn. Snow came down sideways, wrapping the valley in a blanket of white noise. Inside Station E7, the generator moaned against the wind, coughing out light that flickered across the men's faces like the pulse of a dying fire. They hadn't slept. None of them could. Reeves's radio lay silent on the desk, the receiver still hissing with the steady heartbeat tone that had haunted them all night. Davis sat closest to it, listening, trying to measure the rhythm, like it might somehow explain itself. 5 seconds on. 5 seconds off. Always the same. At 0412, Reeves returned from the trail. His coat was caked with frost, his eyes red from cold, and something deeper. Fear or exhaustion, maybe both. He dropped a handful of photographs onto the table. "Took these from the signal tower before the storm hit. Look." The images were grainy, infrared stills from the ridge. Through the static blur, faint heat signatures glowed across the valley floor. Dozens of them, spaced evenly apart. Each flickered like a torch, but the temperature readings were wrong. Too cold to be engines, too warm to be ice. Davis rubbed the back of his neck. Could be interference, maybe. "Interference doesn't move in formation," Reeves cut in. "Whatever they are, they're transmitting. And that signal, it's coming from below us." He pointed to a set of coordinates scrawled on a map pinned to the wall. A red X marked a cave system, barely 2 miles down the ridge. An abandoned mining network sealed off decades ago after a collapse. The official records labeled it inactive, but the hum they'd heard the night before told a different story. Leno stared at the X. "So what's the plan, Sarge?" "We're snowed in. Command's not answering. You want us to hike into a mine in the middle of a blizzard?" Reeves met his eyes. "If someone's operating equipment under this mountain, they're inside our perimeter. That means they know we're here." The room went silent again except for the tone. 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off. By Osexku, they'd packed their gear. Flashlights, portable receiver, rations for 12 hours, and the old Geiger scanner that hadn't been used since training. The snow outside reached their knees, forcing them to move slow, single file. The ridge wound like a serpent, visibility down to 20 meters. Each step felt heavier than the last. Halfway down, Davis's receiver caught a burst of static that nearly tore his earpiece. Then, through the static, voices, faint, layered, distorted, not English, not any language he recognized. "Did you hear that?" he asked, breathless. Raves nodded. "Keep it recording." The trail ended at a sheer cliff wall. The cave entrance yawned beneath an overhang, black as oil. A wooden sign half buried in ice warned, "Restricted area. No entry. U.S. Geological Survey." The paint was old, faded. Someone had scratched through the date, replacing it with something else. 1983, the current year. They exchanged uneasy glances. Reeves clicked on his flashlight and ducked inside. The beam carved through dust and ice. The tunnel sloped downward, winding like the spine of some buried beast. The deeper they went, the more the air changed, thicker, metallic, humming faintly through their boots. The Geiger counter ticked once, then again, then stayed silent. "Radiation?" Leno asked. Reeves shook his head. "No. Power." The tunnel opened into a chamber, large enough to fit a truck, with steel beams crossing overhead. Along the far wall, something pulsed under a sheet of frost. A circular metal hatch, half embedded in rock. Thick cables snaked from its base into the stone, glowing faintly blue. Davis crouched beside it. "What is this? Power relay?" Reeves ran his hand over the surface. The metal was warm. "Not ours." Leno raised the receiver. The tone was stronger here, deafening now. He turned the dial, filtering through the static. Beneath the tone, another sound emerged. A voice, weak, mechanical, repeating the same words over and over. "Sector 9. Maintain silence. Maintain. Sill." The message looped, broken, fractured by time. Reeves's stomach tightened. "Sector 9 doesn't exist anymore. That's Cold War coding, decommissioned 20 years ago." Davis stepped back. "Then who's transmitting it?" Before Reeves could answer, the hatch clicked. Once. Twice. Then a hiss of air escaped from its edges, and the frost began to melt. The blue cables brightened like veins filled with light. "Back!" Reeves shouted. They stumbled behind a rock outcrop as the hatch rotated. The sound wasn't mechanical. It was deliberate, like machinery responding to a forgotten command. A rush of warm air spilled into the chamber, carrying a scent of iron and ozone. The lights on their helmets flickered. The Geiger counter spiked, then went dead. Radios screamed with feedback, and through it came the same broken voice, now clear and cold. "Transmission acknowledged. Stand by for confirmation." Then silence. Total, suffocating silence. Reeves dared a glance toward the hatch. It was open now, a dark corridor descending deeper into the mountain, lined with what looked like glass panels reflecting faint light. Beyond the threshold, the floor glowed with shifting lines, symbols or circuits. They couldn't tell. Leno whispered, "We should go back. Whatever this is, it's not ours to fix." Reeves hesitated. Years of service had taught him to obey protocol. But there was no protocol for this. Their orders were to guard a signal station, not uncover something buried before their time. Still, curiosity, the same thing that kept soldiers awake through lonely watches, pulled him forward. He took one step toward the hatch. That's when the radio came alive again. But it wasn't command this time. It was his own voice, recorded from hours earlier, repeating his words in perfect imitation. "Command, this is Echo 7. Do you copy?" Over and over. The mountain was talking back. Reeves froze. Davis stared at him, wide-eyed. "Sarge, that's you." The echo faded into the same steady pulse. 5 seconds on. 5 seconds off. Somewhere deep in that corridor, something was listening. The hatch breathed. That was the only way Reeves could describe it. Each second that passed, a faint inhale and exhale of warm air came from within. Steady, alive, unnatural. The kind of sound that didn't belong underground. For a long moment, none of them moved. Snowmelt dripped from the ceiling, the echo stretching through the tunnel like the ticking of a clock. Finally, Reeves lifted his flashlight again and stepped closer. The air changed immediately. He could taste the static. Metal and electricity, thick enough to make his teeth ache. Behind him, Davis whispered, "Sarge, maybe it's some kind of Cold War facility, abandoned, sealed off." Reeves didn't turn. Then why is it powered? The hatchway opened into a narrow corridor, its walls lined with glass panels etched with unfamiliar markings. Not Cyrillic, not English. They looked more like data strips, rows of tiny squares pulsing faintly under the dust. The floor sloped downward into the dark, the hum vibrating through their boots like a heartbeat under stone. Lino followed reluctantly, his flashlight trembling. Who builds something like this and doesn't put it on a map? Davis tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. The kind of people who expected no one to come back for it. As they descended, their radios flickered to life, spitting fragments of old transmissions, weather reports, military codes, fragments of songs, all overlapping, like ghosts of forgotten frequencies trapped in the walls. Reeves tried to switch channels, but each one bled into the same low pulse. 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off. The corridor ended at a steel door marked only with a faded stencil, Site 209. The paint had peeled, but beneath it something else had been carved into the metal, by hand. A single word, remember. Davis leaned closer. Remember what? Reeves steadied his flashlight. We're about to find out. The door wasn't locked. It simply opened, as though waiting for them. The moment it did, a low tone filled the chamber beyond, so low it made the air vibrate. Inside, rows of terminals sat in silence, each covered with decades of dust. Screens long dead, keyboards frozen under frost. In the center of the room stood a glass cylinder, 6 feet tall, connected to the floor by thick cables that vanished into the rock. The cables pulsed with the same dull blue glow they'd seen outside. Leno walked around it slowly. Looks like some kind of generator. Revs shook his head. Generators don't store this. Inside the glass cylinder floated something metallic, smooth, spherical, about the size of a human head. It wasn't suspended by wires or brackets. It was hovering in the middle, as though defying gravity, rotating silently. The hum was coming from it. Davis adjusted the Geiger counter again. Still no radiation, just a faint rhythmic pulse, 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off. What if it's a transmitter? Leno whispered. Reeves took a slow step forward. Then who's it transmitting to? The moment he said it, one of the terminals lit up. No one had touched it. A single line of text appeared on the flickering green screen. Connection restored. Station E7 confirmed active. Status, awaiting response. Reeves felt the air go cold despite the heat. That's our station. Davis looked at him, pale. How could it know that? The screen blinked again. Another message appeared, typing itself letter by letter, slow and deliberate. Do not shut it down. It's keeping the war quiet. Leno stepped back. What does that mean? No one answered. The hum deepened, shaking the walls. Another terminal came alive, then another. Lines of old military data flashed in sequence. Coordinates, missile routes, code names, all dated from decades earlier. But none of it made sense. The world had moved on. The Cold War had ended. These were echoes of another time, And yet, the machines were still talking. Reeves touched the cylinder. The glass was warm, almost alive. Beneath his palm he felt a faint vibration, like the steady beat of a human heart. For a moment, he thought he heard something under the hum. A whisper, faint but distinct. It sounded like his name. He pulled his hand away. "Let's record everything," he said. "We'll figure it out back at base." But as Davis reached for his camera, every light in the room went out. Total darkness. Then, in the black, the voice returned. Not through the radio this time, but from everywhere at once. It wasn't human. It was layered, fractured, a chorus of tones speaking in unison. Conflict. Prevented. Protocol active. Maintain silence. The hum swelled until it rattled their bones. Then the lights snapped back on, only dimmer this time, flickering like candlelight. Reeves looked at the terminals. All the screens now displayed the same image, a map of the eastern United States. Dozens of small red dots blinked across it, each one labeled Station E1 through E9. And at the bottom of the map, one final message flashed in red. One link remains unaccounted. The lights dimmed again. The hum dropped to silence. And in that silence, a new sound rose, the faint echo of boots somewhere deeper within the corridor. Reeves turned, flashlight trembling. "Who's there?" No reply, just footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. They were not alone. The footsteps stopped just beyond the doorway. 3 sets of eyes turned toward the corridor, flashlights shaking in their hands. Reeves raised his weapon, pulse thundering in his ears. "Identify yourself," he barked. Nothing. Only the echo of his own voice coming back, distorted, deeper, like someone repeating him a few seconds late. Then came a faint, clicking noise, mechanical but not metallic, like a camera shutter or a Geiger counter trying to find its rhythm again. The beam from Leno's flashlight caught something moving, a shadow gliding across the wall, too tall, too slow to be human. But when the light hit the open corridor, it revealed nothing, just the hollow tunnel leading back to the hatch. The hum started again, faint this time, like it was breathing through the walls. Davis whispered, "Maybe it's playback, echoes from the speakers." Reeves didn't buy it. Those terminals were dead 30 years. There's nothing to play back. He scanned the corridor again. The shadow was gone. Leno's voice trembled. "We need to get out, Sarge. Whatever this place is, it's not just transmitting. It's listening." Reeves hesitated. His mind wrestled between fear and duty. If this system is still active, it's linked to defense protocols. We shut it down wrong. We could trigger something worse. Davis swallowed hard. Worse than this? Reeves turned back to the central cylinder. The sphere inside had stopped rotating. It hung perfectly still, the glow inside dimming to a soft pulse. 5 seconds on. 5 seconds off. The heartbeat had slowed. Suddenly, the terminal beside it flickered. New text appeared, line by line. Station intrusion detected. Authorization required. Voice confirmation. Captain Neo. Thomas Reeves. Reeves froze. His name, his rank. He hadn't been a captain. He'd been promoted only to sergeant. But before he could speak, the machine responded to its own prompt. Confirmation accepted. Reactivating link. A low vibration filled the floor, rising in pitch until every panel in the room trembled. The glass cylinder flared bright white, blinding them for a moment. When their eyes adjusted, the screens around the chamber began streaming data again. Missile coordinates, encrypted logs, weather updates from 1962, 1977, 1983, every year looping into the next. It was as though the Cold War had never ended. Leno's radio crackled, then spoke in a calm, authoritative voice none of them recognized. Echo 7, report status. Authorization Omega Red. Respond immediately. Davis blinked. That's not command. That code's been dead since the 70s. Reeves gripped his mic. Identify yourself. This is Sergeant Thomas Reeves, Station E7. We've uncovered... But the voice cut him off. Reeves, you were instructed to maintain silence. The protocol must remain intact. The signal dropped. The hum stopped again. For a moment, the silence was almost peaceful. Then the ground beneath them shifted. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere beyond the walls, machinery roared to life. Massive turbines or engines buried deep within the mountain. Davis shouted over the noise. What's happening? Reeves scanned the terminals. One of them displayed a countdown. 020, 1:59, 1:58. Leno's voice cracked. Sarge, that's a timer. Reeves slammed the keyboard, trying to override the sequence. The screen resisted every command. Failsafe engaged. Silence protocol initiated. Failsafe? Davis repeated. What kind of failsafe? The answer came through the speaker. Cold, digital, final. In the event of exposure, Site 09 will neutralize all active transmissions. Reeves's heart sank. It's going to bury itself. Leno's flashlight swung wildly. Then we have to go. Now! They ran. The corridor pulsed with red emergency lights as alarms echoed through the tunnels. The hum grew deeper, angrier. The air thickened with heat and dust as vents above them spewed steam. The hatch they entered through was already halfway closed, steel grinding against stone. Davis shoved his shoulder into it, straining. Help me out here. Reeves and Leno pushed together, the metal inching open just enough for them to slip through. Behind them, the mountain groaned. The tunnels shuddered like an animal in pain. Blue light burst from the cracks in the floor, climbing up the walls like veins catching fire. Outside, the snowstorm had calmed, but the entire ridge was glowing faintly from below. Reeves turned back, just as the hatch sealed shut with a thunderous slam. The light behind it vanished, leaving only the echo of that mechanical heartbeat, one last time. 5 seconds on. 5 seconds off. Then nothing. They stumbled down the trail in silence. By the time they reached the station, dawn had started bleeding through the clouds. The radar was offline, the generator silent. Everything looked as it had before, as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. On the desk, the receiver was still powered. The signal light glowed faintly red. Reeves reached for it, hesitating before pressing the button. Command, this is Echo 7. Do you copy? For the first time in 12 hours, the static cleared. A voice answered, Echo 7, this is Central, reading you loud and clear. Status? Reeves stared at Davis and Leno, both pale and silent. Then he looked back at the mic. He almost told them everything. The hatch, the voices, the countdown. But something inside stopped him. The words of the machine echoed in his mind. It's keeping the war quiet. He swallowed. Status normal, he said. No anomalies detected. The operator on the other end replied calmly. Copy that, Echo 7. Maintain current position until further notice. The line went dead. Reeves sat back, hands shaking. Outside, the valley looked peaceful again, untouched. But far below, buried in the silence of the mountain, a faint pulse started once more. 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off. And somewhere, miles away, another station light turned green. When dawn finally broke over the Appalachian ridges, the fog looked different. It didn't drift like mist. It moved like something alive, curling and coiling as if reluctant to leave. The survivors of Outpost Echo 7 stood in silence, staring at what was left of their world. A broken relay tower, collapsed huts, and the faint smell of ozone that lingered like an echo of thunder that never came. Captain Hale sat on a rock, his radio clutched in one hand, thumb brushing against the cracked switch. The device had gone silent an hour before sunrise. The red light, the one that flickered with that impossible signal, was dead. But Hale's expression wasn't relief, it was dread, because the signal's final transmission had played back a sound none of them could explain. A voice. It hadn't come from their frequency. It hadn't even come from a known spectrum. Yet somehow, it spoke English. Transmission complete, containment breached, await further instruction. The voice had no tone, no accent, no breathing, just the flat precision of something imitating human speech. Sergeant Lowe stared at Hale. "Sir, we need to call command. They'll send a recovery team." Hale didn't move. "And tell them what, Lowe? That we got attacked by fog? That the mountain talked to us?" "Then what the hell do we do?" Lowe demanded. Hale looked toward the east, where the sun began to burn through the clouds. "We make sure it doesn't leave the mountain." By noon, the team had regrouped at the destroyed relay tower. Only 5 men remained from the original squad of 12. They dug trenches, sealed off the access tunnels, and rigged the remaining fuel cells for detonation. While they worked, Private Ortiz found something buried beneath the frozen soil. An old metal plate, worn and rusted. There were markings on it, faded by time but still legible. U.S. Department of Defense. Experimental Site D-47. Established 1943. Classified. Lowe ran his hand over the text. Site D-47. We were never briefed on this. Hale exhaled slowly. Because it was buried. Whatever they tested here, it's what caused that signal. Theories started to swirl. Cold War experiments, underground transmitters, even weather manipulation projects. But the truth was simpler and far worse. The radio tower wasn't built to send messages. It was built to contain one. At 1300 hours, the static returned. The red light flickered again, but faint this time, like a dying heartbeat. "Hello. Is anyone still there? We are not the first. You have opened it." The men froze. The words came in fragments, distorted, echoing as if bouncing off the walls of a cave miles deep. Then came the low hum again, the same impossible tone that had made the valley shake the night before. Ortiz screamed and clutched his helmet. "It's inside the comms. It's inside the damn comms." Hale yanked the power supply, cutting the signal mid-scream. The air fell dead quiet again. He turned to his men, face pale. "We finish this. No matter what happens, we don't let that signal reach another tower." They buried the last of the fuel cells around the relay structure. Hale armed the detonator and stepped back. For a brief moment, there was peace, bird song, the sound of wind brushing through pine needles, the rhythm of breath. Then he pressed the switch. The explosion tore through the mountain, ripping the ground open with a thunderous roar. Flame and dust rolled skyward, swallowing everything in sight. When the smoke cleared, nothing was left of the tower, just a blackened crater, glowing faintly where molten rock met steel. The team stood at the ridge, faces blank, until Lowe broke the silence. "Do you think it's over?" Hale didn't answer. He just stared into the ruins. "No. You can't destroy a frequency, Sergeant." He handed Lowe the battered radio, the one they thought had died earlier. The red light blinked once, then again, then stayed on. 2 weeks later, Command finally sent a retrieval team to investigate. They found no survivors, just empty tents, burned-out vehicles, and a single radio sitting atop a pile of rocks. Its battery pack melted into the dirt. When they powered it, the static returned. But hidden beneath the static was a faint sound. Boots on gravel, voices whispering coordinates that didn't exist, and finally, the same phrase Hale had heard before the blast. Transmission complete. Await further instruction. Epilogue. Months later, in a secured military research lab in Virginia, a classified report crossed the desk of a man whose name was blacked out. The document read, Recovered audio, Outpost Echo 7 incident. Date, December 12th, 1979. Status, redacted notes. Unidentified frequency detected across 17 radio towers within the Appalachian region. Cross-analysis reveals signal repetition, consistent with Cold War shadow wave prototype, Project D47. Recommendation, full containment reinstated. Relocation of monitoring facility to undisclosed coordinates. Additional note, subject Hale voice pattern, detected in the final 3 seconds of recovered transmission, though confirmed KIA on site. The official stamped, classified, due eyes only. Across the page and filed it away. But if you tune to the right wavelength, deep in the night, far from the noise of the cities, some swear you could still hear that same whisper buried beneath the static. We are not the first.